Hello and welcome to another episode of Single Track. We keep going and going, even though I think everyone wants us to stop. So here we are. It's May? Is that the month we're in right now? No, it's May, and we just got done participating in Rock Candy Running's virtual Vert challenge that you put together, Matthias, and it's been kind of fun to go through our Strava and see everybody running. And so on this week's episode, it's a very special virtual Vert challenge episode with one of the most badass runners that participate in it. And no, not you or me, Matthias.
Oh, that's right. We have the winner of the women's race, Tabatha Collins, with us. And Tabatha was with us last year sometime. And now she's back. Welcome back to the show.
Hi. Thanks for having me back.
Absolutely. Here, but before we dive into the show, you are a teacher. And so you are like majorly affected during this quarantine situation. Give us a little bit of an insight of what your daily life looks like right now.
Okay, it's very interesting because I teach music and movement to 5 and 6 year olds, to kindergarten, and the Jumpstart program, which is kids that are going to be entering kindergarten next year. So yeah, we have a lot of Zoom meetings. We have a staff meeting. We have class meetings with our students. I meet with the district PE teachers. I meet with the district music teachers. Then just the specialist at our school meet. So we have those. And then we have a Google Classroom set up where we put out, what the kids need to be doing each week. And I basically kept it simple where I made a weekly calendar for PE and a separate one for music. And then they just go on each day and they click a little picture and it has a little activity for them to do in both areas. And then I've been doing a lot of videoing myself, which I really do not, it's very out of my comfort zone. I just finished one this morning because we're going to be doing world music theme for a couple weeks. So I made a head, shoulders, knees, and toes video in Japanese. Atamakata hiza ashi. We've done a couple other movement videos. And then I do a weekly talent show where any of the kids from any of my classes can come and share a talent. So I've had kids play songs on the piano who didn't even start playing the piano until the school's closed. I've had kids do handstands and front rolls and dances. It's been pretty fun.
That's awesome.
It's absolutely incredible. I've got 2 kids, and I think on Twitter, mine are teenagers, so it's fairly easy for me to keep them entertained. But on Twitter and in the media, we hear so much how parents are sort of exasperated and annoyed at the situation of having to take care of their own kids at home and try to teach them. And I wanted to give you, and in extension, all of the teachers all over the country and world, a huge shout out and thank you for being so incredibly flexible and adapting to the situation. Stepping out of your comfort zone and finding new ways of connecting with our kids and trying to teach them and trying to keep them entertained and somewhat connected to their peers and to learning and stuff. It's incredibly difficult and an incredible feat. So thank you.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, thank you for doing your part too, because I know the parents, I know that's a pretty real struggle right there for a lot of parents. I have a 13-year-old too, so he's pretty independent.
Yeah, I think once you have teenagers, right? They're used to carrying a Chromebook around or whatever, right? And logging in and communicating with the teachers themselves. But there's just been so much exasperation kind of expressed by parents about the situation, especially the first couple weeks. The amount of emails that we've gotten and the amount of adjustments, because we don't have like an official platform, right? Sort of every teacher needed to figure out. I mean, if you teach math, then you probably need a different platform. You might not need YouTube. But if you teach movement and PE, right, you need to find a way of how to visually reach your kids, right? So it's an interesting challenge. And from what it looks like, we might be in it for a little bit longer than just the end of the school year, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm a little worried because my contract is actually only for this school year. And so now I have to try to find a job in the middle, find a job for next year in the middle of all this. So it'll be interesting.
Oh, I hear that. I'm sorry. So, how about professional runner? Would that be a job? You've certainly got the resume to sort of like hook up with some sponsors and saying, here, come on, Hoka or Ultra or what have you.
Well, I only wear Brooks.
Oh, well, there you go. I don't know. Doug, do you have a contact with Brooks or so? Do we have a PR person?
No.
And so you mentioned Brooks last time you were on the show. What is your go-to pair of shoes? Because I've been running in them a lot now, and I've absolutely loved some of their road shoes.
Oh, yeah, they don't make them. I have to get them on
right.
eBay. Yeah, they're called Connects. But the trail shoes, I like the grits, which they still make. Okay. But I'm still on 2 models ago. Now I switched to buying the men's version because I can't find the women's online. I keep getting stuck with these shoes I like, and then they stop making it. They all do that, right?
Well, that was like one of my favorite pairs of Brooks, like 7 years ago, the older Cascadias. Then they redesigned the Cascadias completely. And I was like, I don't enjoy these shoes anymore. And it was really sad because I can't find the shoes that I love. And I know this is like such a huge first world problem right now for everything else going on in the world. But when you do have those shoes that you love, it's hard to break away from that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I don't know. Have you tried the grits? Because I have a pair of Cascadias. I like hiking in them, but they're a little heavy, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, the older ones felt a little lighter, and I actually just ordered a pair of the Ricochets, so I'm curious how those will be.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I've been running in like Rebel 5s and 6s, and I know there are like 7 or 8 now, but when I can get a $25 pair of shoes, it's hard to do something.
Oh, yeah. Different. I've heard good things about those too, though.
Oh, good. I'll be curious, and if they're great, I'll let you know. But so, how has the last time we spoke with you? You were toward the end of a world record of ultras in a year. How was that finishing it up, and how have you been recovering since?
Well, starting about September of last year, I started getting some pretty bad back pain, and it never happened while I was running, but it would be at the end of races, and it just progressively got worse from about that time frame until my last race, which is kind of crazy because that is the one race where it did hit me while I was running at the Pigtails in December. And so luckily that was the last race, but I ended up, I didn't have medical insurance until January. So in January I went and I had x-ray done of my spine, and I found out I had, it's called, I don't even know if I can pronounce it, but it's like spondylolisthesis. And I was at grade 3. So it's basically, if you look at the spine and you look at the bones, there's this one vertebrae that's like totally popped out. And this is something you can be born with. Like they said, this is pre-existing. This was not caused from running. So then they had me do an MRI because they're like, yeah, we don't really think that's actually what's causing the pain. So I had an MRI done, and I had a herniated disc. So I stopped running pretty much. And so that changed this whole year up quite a bit. And so it's very ironic with what's happening in the world right now because of my job. And I was going to this job where you're constantly, like, the worst thing for my spine is bending over and like twisting. And I'm teaching, 5-year-olds
How to
so just
touch their
tying their
toes.
shoes and bending.
Yeah.
So it was very difficult.
Yeah.
And so I would leave some days, like I couldn't even hardly stand up. And I don't feel like I was able to heal. Even when I cut back the running, I couldn't really heal because of that, because of what I was doing at work. And so, everybody got really depressed when this all happened, but I was already kind of feeling down because, January, February, I couldn't do the running. I tried to do walks, and like some of those walks, I'd still have pain. So then when everything shut down and I stopped having to go in to do that, that's when I actually really healed. And then, the pain went away. And so I've been pretty happy lately because I can run again.
Exactly. So the pandemic actually made you happy. Is that the headline of the podcast?
Yeah. And so like I was supposed to go to Boston, and then ended up, I was kind of like, oh, I've already paid for my flight. I've already paid for the race. And then that ends up, like, all these races that I was in no position to do, they all end up getting canceled or moved. So it's just kind of strange how it worked out with what happened with me. So Boston ended up getting moved to September, and then I ended up taking the refund because I can't go. If I'm going to be teaching, that's like the second week of school.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So, but we did it virtually.
That's right.
Mine.
Yeah, exactly.
So, and that's the day I realized I was better.
Okay.
Because I didn't have any pain at the end of my run. So
that's amazing.
Yeah. So I'm glad, because I was kind of in that mindset that, I'm never going to be able to run again. And am I going to have this pain forever? And because I didn't know if it was the first condition or the second condition, but it sounded like it was probably the herniated disc. And now I just have to be really aware of, how I move, how I bend, how, things like that, because of course I don't want it to happen again.
Sure. Well,
but
that's a story, right? I mean, when Doug asked you, I was here listening to his question. I expected you to be like, yes, and I finished the year off. It was incredible, and balloons and everything. Yeah. And then you're like, well, actually, what happened? And we're like, whoa. So for our listeners to catch up, though, so you did finish off the year. You did get the world record. And last time you mentioned on the show, too, that one of the interesting challenges was getting it all certified. Talk to us a little bit about the process of submitting all the results, the paperwork to prove, and what comes afterwards.
Yeah, I'm still in the process of doing. I mean, I have everything submitted, but apparently I didn't do it all correctly. So I have to go back in and kind of work on that. That's not my favorite part. I'm kind of a procrastinator I have a year, but I do need to sit down on my computer, and I have to go in and kind of label things a bit better so they know, what's from what race and stuff like that. So, I just kind of sent them everything in at once, and so I'm still working on that, but it's in the process.
Cool. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, keep us updated.
And so are you also going to be applying for a world record for the amount of silly paperwork you have to do?
I wish I had somebody to do all the paperwork for me. Yeah, it is not something it's because you had to upload everything individually. And so it was just very time consuming. And I apparently was supposed to label every single thing individually. And so that's where I messed up.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Just like I messed up in reading the directions for your race.
Well, at least
That's
it
a
didn't.
perfect segue.
I know it's a perfect segue, but I do want to
Looks like
say
we found the new co-host.
Yeah, no, it's brilliant. That was a perfect segue. I do want to add though, at least it didn't reject the entire year and say, well, you labeled it wrong, so screw the entire year. You have to redo it, right? At least to give you a chance of saying, well, you can't submit it. You just have to make all those changes. So that's one good thing. It's not a government agency when you submit something wrong. You're like, meh, sorry, you're done.
Yeah, and I have no excuse. I mean, I definitely have time right now to do it. So,
well, there you go. If you're not on podcasts, so yes, segue. You signed up for the virtual vert challenge that we've had this weekend, and in some weird coincidence, we all ran roads, right?
yeah. I mean, I guess it's a gravel road.
Okay, that counts more as trail than when Doug and I ran. So. What
do you mean? A main paved road is somehow much established? I actually, before we dive in, just because this is this podcast, where Tabatha, where do you differentiate? When does a trail start and a dirt road end? Because there are different levels. There's different variations of dirt roads. If it's a road, is it always a road, or do you have a different way of thinking about it if it's not just all big chunks of gravel?
No, I think if it's paved, it's a road. I think if it's dirt or gravel, or because there's so many. When we go out, there's all the forest roads, which I pretty much call trail. So. Yeah. They feel different on your body. That's the biggest thing, You're not pounding pavement.
Exactly.
So
I would concur with that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just really like to know, because it is one of those things. Like, if you run a dirt road, are you running roads? Should you be wearing road shoes? There's a whole school of thought out here, and I've talked to people out in Montana that are like, no, a dirt road's just a road. I'm like, well, I get that. Most of the dirt roads in the world seem to be here, but
it's also Montana. If they would consider that every dirt road is a trail, how many roads does Montana have other than freeways?
Isn't that the start to a song? How many roads does Montana have?
Oh, fantastic. I like it.
Well, there's the Tunnel Hill 100 miler? It's called the Tunnel Hill?
Yes.
Where I think it actually qualifies. I think Camille Herron actually got 2 world records because it qualifies as road and trail.
Oh, wow.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know why, but so sometimes it can be both.
Yeah, exactly.
That's good to know.
She must have submitted the paperwork correctly.
No, she has somebody do it for her.
Exactly.
For sure.
There's somebody from Solomon who's like, yeah, we're going to submit that correctly. I don't know. Is she Solomon? I don't know who she is with. That's hilarious. All right. So, you signed up. So give us a little bit of I know we joked about you kind of misunderstanding the idea, even though you recovered well, because you then went out the next day and crushed a huge number of miles, vert, and hill. But what was your process in thinking about this? Because that's been kind of, for me, the fascinating one as I was coming up with the formula and trying to figure out, well, how are people going to interpret it? And then obviously I've got several questions, people emailing me, asking me how, what they think they should do and what's good to go. And then obviously Doug and I talked about it quite a bit. So talk us a little bit around the thought process.
Well, I was on a run and I was trying to come up with the hill. I wanted it to be close to my house. And I was thinking about some of the hills within a mile or two. And since I thought it was a cumulative event where we added, I saw the dates May 1st to May 4th, and I thought we were adding all these miles from all the days. So I thought, well, I still work Mondays, Friday and Monday. So even the hill, there's a hill down the street that's a pretty good hill. I'm like, I'd have to drive down here, do it, come back home, drive down again, because I'm thinking, I'll try to get it in between meetings and things. But then as I was looking at the formula, I'm like, well, wait a minute. This is like reps. You get a point for every rep. So I'm like, I need a shorter hill. I need like a really short hill. And I'm like, well, I got one right here. It's literally my backyard.
Sweet.
So it's a private lane that comes up to my house. So it's supposed to be 0.1. Now that was an interesting thing in doing this, because I do think the GPS, I think I ran further and I think my vert's more, because I think it's because I'm turning around so much. It's got glitched, because I did do the trial 1 milers, 2 1 milers. And so when you do the math, it's like, it doesn't all add up quite right when I did the whole. So, but that's kind of what I figured. I'm like, well, I need a short, steep hill. So, and I was like, well, that's interesting. We get more points for doing more reps. But once I did it, I understand why we get more points for more reps. Like you never get into a rhythm.
Yep.
My ankles were like super sore, I think, because you're turning around. It's just, yeah.
So was it 0.1 up or 0.1 up and down to combined?
It's normally it's 0.1 up and 0.1 down, but over the course of doing it again, it was only giving me like 0.15 total. So it was cutting off distance every lap.
Yeah. And how much vert?
It's supposed to be 60 feet.
60 feet.
Every time. Yeah, it's supposed to be 60 feet in that 0.1, or maybe 50. Yeah, about 50. Because when I did the test mile, I got about 450 feet of gain.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I had 8. Yeah.
And that's what I was curious with this, is if you noticed just a bit of a glitch in the distance tracking and or the elevation, because we're all using different watches, different, or the Strava app on our phone, and depending on how the GPS is working that day, we could be anywhere on that. When you uploaded it to Strava, did you have an option to go back and kind of see if the elevation, or you could change the elevation or distance, like just hit the calculate button again?
No, I thought about going back after I submitted it to you guys, and then just seeing, how you can go and have it correct it. I was thinking of going in and doing that and just seeing if it would correct it to something, because I was curious.
Yeah.
I was more curious for distance, because I can kind of figure out the elevation, but
but the distance definitely.
But I figured that would be cheating, so I didn't touch it.
I appreciate that. I was worried about that. No, it's an interesting thing, right? Because we can sort of make the assumption that these short reps are probably really difficult on GPS, but if you think about it, these virtual races are inherently prone to a variety of interpretation based on the devices that we're using, no matter what we are running, right? I mean, I've gone out on 15-mile runs and compared it with the guy next to me who has almost as good of a watch as I have, or an even better watch. And there's always such a level of discrepancy among the results that I'm like, while we're doing those virtual races, we just have to allow ourselves that collective understanding and grace that thing's just going to be a little wonky, right?
Yeah, it probably would have been better if I just would have run the app on the phone. I probably would have got a lot more miles.
No, it's true. It's true. The app would have probably padded it more than the watch. That's correct. But then again, you already won the women's race. How much more number? What did you get? I mean, you perhaps felt like it was more, and that's why you deserved more.
It did feel like more. It felt like an ultra. I mean, it felt like, that was pretty hard on your body.
Yeah,
for sure.
And so once you found that you could do that hill right by your house, right? How were you mentally with the repeats? I know when you're running ultras and everything, you have this change of scenery, but you did, I don't even know how, I didn't pull it up yet, but you did so many repeats on the same hill. How did you deal with that process just of, I'm doing the same thing over and over again?
Well, we had a song. It was 199 repeats on the hill to go, 99 repeats on the hill. Get to the top, turn around, 98 hill repeats to go.
Nice.
No, I had two friends come and run with me. So I did not run any of those repeats alone, which I think that's it. Like, I would not. There's like no way I could have kept. I mean, I don't think so. If I wouldn't have had company. So, you just mentally are like, I'm going to be out here all day. I mean, I'm averaging like 3 miles an hour. So I'm like, okay, this is like, okay, we're going for a sub 10-hour marathon. Like, and it's like, yeah, you just have to, that's all you have to do is think, I'm going to be out here all day. So let's just hang out on the hill.
Yep.
And that's what we did, And I had two friends who are both very good at keeping conversation. So it just kind of made it fly by.
I mean, what you're expressing is perfectly what I was hoping for by creating this formula, because I've been sitting on this idea for weeks, trying to figure out a way of coming up with a formula that would be different and unique and challenging, but somehow would work. And I know that by getting a point for every rep, some people felt like it was overcompensating the reps, and people who picked like 500 or 1,000 foot hills obviously were penalized in a sense for that. But I needed to find a way, and I didn't have a data modeling expert who could come up with the right kind of formula that would be fair in all scenarios. But what I wanted to encourage, and I think that's what we all achieved, is I wanted to get people to find hills as close to home as possible, right? Because we're not supposed to be traveling to 3,000 foot mountain climb somewhere right now. So I wanted to encourage people to find 60 foot hills in their backyard. So that part worked out perfectly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think as somebody who does like going to the mountains and doing those climbs, I can tell you I would have much rather done a few of those than what I did.
Right.
For sure. Mm-hmm. And I think that would have been a lot easier. The way I felt, I don't feel like this if I would have went and done 5,000 mountain repeats. I can think of like Mount Townsend as like 5,000. So that's about, a half minute. So if I would have done that twice, I don't think my body would have felt the way it felt doing this.
Amazing. I love to hear that.
And so you're talking
I think
about
the formula.
that, yeah.
I think the formula is fine. Like I said in the beginning, I was like, "Wow, we get all these points for reps. I don't get it, but I get it. I get it now. I've done it. So I think it's a good formula. I don't know. The only thing I thought of that maybe could have been maybe guidelines like here's the minimum, because I was like, well, what if somebody goes and does a 10-foot hill, 500 times, and they only get this distance and this vert, but then they get 500 points for reps. So that would have been the only thing I think I would have maybe done a little bit different as, minimum of, just for the sake of my race, we'll just say 0.1.
Yeah.
Well, that's
anything less than what I picked.
And so I messaged Matthias the morning that I was doing mine, and I said, I figured out how to cheat, but I'm not going to. And it was exactly that.
3 stairs.
Well, I could walk this block, and it has 15 feet of gain, and I could do this all day, right? Like it's right. I pass the house consistently, and so I could do 300 times theoretically, right? And then I'd have a 300 score on top of the 15 feet of gain every time. And I was like, well, that's not what the spirit of this is. And it looks like that everybody did find something to really challenge themselves with. But yeah, I noticed that you could find something super short to do with just minimal gain and just keep doing it all day. It would be exhausting, but you would have bumped your numbers so high up that you would have been a top 10 easily, right? So.
If you would have done that, Doug,
most people.
how many miles would you have run?
if I would have done 100 on that.
No, 300.
300
300 on your 15 feet block.
I'll figure the math out as you guys talk about
Okay.
something.
No, because that's the thing that I was curious about, right?
Yeah.
The winner in the men's race, he is from New York, and he did a short 60-foot hill too. But he did it in a city park, right? And it looked a lot more relaxed than if you would have done it, if you would have find some gnarly forest road or so. And mileage wise, he was also reasonable and stuff. But on the other side, it encouraged people like them to participate because they otherwise would have never been able to sign up. And I purposely wanted to avoid it to somebody in Salt Lake or, Boulder or so who has a 2,000-foot hill in their backyard automatically is going to win just because they're lucky that they have a hill that they can easily run up when we are in a pandemic where we don't have access to those big hills, right? And that's where the idea came from. And I don't know. I mean, perhaps, half a point would have been per rep or so, perhaps would have been even it out a little bit more. I have all the results now, and so I want to now do some data modeling around it and see. Because in the end, the people who won, they put a lot of time in it, and they put a lot of effort in it no matter what, right?
Yeah, for sure.
So nobody was able to really cheat, right?
Yeah.
Nobody was able to get to 400 points by running 2.5 miles and calling it good.
Yeah.
That would have been cheating for me. That would have been, effectively exploiting the formula, I suppose. It still wouldn't have been cheated if they adhered to the formula, right?
And so had I done my cheat, I would have had 360 points with 15 miles.
Well, 15 miles is still...
Which is still a decent amount, right? But it was so small of a repeat that I was just like, no, that's not worth it. So.
Yeah, I figured this is a group of trail runner. I just figured people would kind of just want to challenge themselves,
right?
And not just cheat the formula.
Yeah,
and it sounds like that's what happened. So I thought it was very motivating personally, since I took all that time off and I got out of the habit of running. I did the Aravapia.
Right.
The 10-day one. And then so as soon as that was over, I'm like, I need something else, like just to keep it, just to keep that motivation. So I thought it was great.
Cool.
And so for your run, you ran, I think 188 sets of hills and 26.26 miles with 10,217 feet of gain.
Yeah. See, I think it should have been over 12,000 based on, because I think it averaged out to 450 per mile. So 450 feet per mile. But then I also think it might have been a couple extra miles. So it might have been like over 13,000.
Well, yeah. And looking at your Strava.
Still, that's a hard marathon because I did the Great Wall of China marathon and it got about 10,000 feet. So I'm like, yeah, it's a hard marathon.
That's
nice. Yeah, it's funny, right? I'm looking at the results right now. I'm looking at the top scores. And if you look at it in miles, everybody put a serious effort in, right? Nobody got to over 200 points easy. Everybody put on. The only person who got it in less than 13 miles is Brian Detweiler, who did it in 12.2, and he did 116 hills because he did stairs. He contacted me and said he had a staircase in his condo building or something, and he asked me if he could, and he was trying to Everest on it, and he still put 9 hours in, right? So,
wow.
Yeah. And he gave up because he had a software emergency with his job, and so he had to kind of abort it. But he had gotten a new watch, and the watch really screwed up the tracking, and I think that frustrated him a little bit, that it just didn't capture, because the way mine was about 95-foot hill. And the way I sort of let my GPS catch up is that every time at the top and at the bottom of the hill, I ran kind of a little extra loop to let the GPS catch up. Because I felt like if I would have sort of immediately turned around the second I reached the top of the hill, it would have undercounted. And so I think with him, because he was at the top of the staircase, right? He couldn't just like run an extra 50 feet or something, right? There was nothing there. And so for him, like his GPS map looked the wonkiest of all of them. But yeah, I mean, he put 9 hours in on the staircase. I mean, that's still a solid effort.
Yes.
Yeah, he was probably pretty sore for a few days.
Especially the downhill, right? Man.
Yeah. Yeah. I should have probably done that, is to take white, because once my ankles from the first day, because the first day I did the 10-miler,
right.
Yeah, they were sore, and I think I think mostly I did just turn around, but now that you're saying, I should have probably done like wide turnarounds on both ends.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah, and that's, I kind of did the same as you, Matthias. Is when I got to the top of the hill, there was a telephone pole that I would walk around and either like kick it with my foot or like slap it with my hand as many times as my loop was. So it just gave me a little extra time. And then when I got downhill, then there was a curb and a tree that I would just kind of walk around and then turn around and do it. And I think that helped kind of stabilize the GPS a bit. But I mean, it was still a little off because, my hill was 120 something feet and I did 21 on it and I barely got over 2,000 feet of gain. So that math didn't quite add up. But
oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Huh.
But again, it was more of a, for mine, it was more of a, well, this is just fun. Like I'm not going to be breaking 100 anyway. So does it matter? Let's go until it's not necessarily as fun. And that's when I stopped.
Yeah.
And I still got 11 miles with a couple thousand feet of gain. And that's not a bad day out, especially right by home. So
yeah.
I was pretty happy with it.
Yeah. And we're all probably in the same boat. I mean, as far as, especially those of us who picked shorter hills. I mean, so we're all kind of probably having the same issues. So kind of evens out probably.
Yeah, exactly. When it's such a known issue for tracking GPS, then everyone's back to even, right? Like I didn't see anybody have one of those strange GPS flares where all of a sudden they're running on flat and they get 13,000 feet because the satellite just glitched out for a second, right? So.
Let's talk about how we tracked reps, because Doug, you have got a cool story of how you did it. You kicked the telephone pole.
Well, I actually
thank you, AT&T.
Yeah, I actually had a better way to track it as I was going up because I ran a little dirt path up next to a road for the hill, and there is a guardrail next that separates the road from the trail, and so. Each rep I did, I moved a pine cone from the post of the guardrail up. And so I went up 21 posts. And that was kind of a fun way to do it because then I could see the progress. And I debated doing a time lapse, but then I was like, I don't feel like setting all of this up. But yeah, so that's how I kept track of it. And I only almost forgot twice. So I think that's a win. But yeah, that was my way. It was easier because I realized like, I didn't bring a pen or a piece of paper or anything with me to track. So pine cones it was.
I love that. That's a really fun and cute way. Tabatha, you just did Mario check marks?
Yeah, I had because I thought we were doing lots of runs. I made these bracelets. So I just cut strips of cardboard or construction paper and I labeled each run, 'cause
Yes.
So, and then I put it on my wrist and taped it. And then as I went up, I just did tallies, but I carried the marker. So I didn't want to bend over.
Right.
Like I didn't want to bend over at the top of it. So I just carried the marker in one hand. And every time I got to a certain point on the hill, I did a tally.
Nice.
But then there was like a torrential, probably like the worst rain we've had the entire year. So that bracelet fell off because it kind of turned to mush. And so at that point, I just had to count off a Garmin. Like I had to just count it.
It's funny that you talk about paper because my paper also completely disintegrated in the rain.
So you were stuck in that too?
Yeah. So what was fun to me, because my hill was so short or so close to home, that I actually, after rep 40, I actually ran home because I was completely soaked and I didn't have my rain jacket with me or anything. And I was like, okay, if I want to stay out there for more than 50, I could have like fought through another 10 and called it good, but I wanted more. And so at rep 40, I ran home and got completely changed, new shoes and socks and everything, because I was just so soaked. And that rain was so long too, because it rained then later in the afternoon too, but only for like 10 minutes. And then the sun immediately came out, right? But that one rained, stayed, and it stayed cold that like my hands were starting to get really clammy, and I was like, this is not a good place to be in if I want to stay out for another couple hours. And so I just ran home. And as I uploaded on Instagram, I actually got my bread dough that was sitting in the fridge out and rolled out the loaves of bread and got them ready for the oven. And then by the time the rain had stopped, and I ran back to my hill and continued my reps, which was a nice extended aid station, but I kept Strava running. And I was like, well, what does it matter? It's like, we're not counting time anyway, so I can do that.
Okay, good, because at mile 15, I had, I was in shorts and a t-shirt, and I was like teeth chattering, freezing cold.
Yeah.
So my friend that was doing repeats with me, he went home to change, and he lives like 2 miles away. So he ran home to change, and I went into the house, and I actually threw bacon in the oven.
Yes.
Threw bacon in the oven, and then I hopped in the shower for like a quick hot shower and did the same thing. Changed clothes. Yeah, and then we had bacon for the last 10 miles. So
that is brilliant.
But I figured the same thing. I took a break at like mile 7.5 to eat, and then at mile 15, you burn more calories too when you're doing hills. So and you get like lightheaded. So yeah. I figured, I guess those are a couple of aid station stops, so that's probably fine.
Yeah,
well, go for it.
That's how I broke it down to I obviously didn't do as much as you guys, but like I'm nursing injuries, so I was like, okay, I'm just going to take it easy. So every 5 reps, since it was right outside the house, I went into the house, I drank some water, grabbed a snack, and then every hour that I was out, I just, had another goo or something, and then just went out, and it provided a nice little break where it's really hard when there isn't an aid station or there isn't a set mileage that you're just out there. It's nice to have some sort of way to say, okay, at this mark, I'm going to do this, and at this, I'm going to do, because I feel like that staves off the kind of the insanity that would have come for you doing 188 repeats.
Yeah, and we even, around mile 13.5, we said, okay, at mile 15, let's do this. And then when I brought the bacon out, I'm like, okay, we're not eating this bacon until we get to mile 20. Like, just giving yourself those little things to look forward to.
So important.
And the monotony.
It is really fun and fascinating as people we've all run races, and we've all been subjected to, this feeling of time crunch and this feeling of competition. And here we have this virtual race where we have this theoretical competition, but in the end, it's just us trying to go for a long day and see what happens in the world. And then because we have this experience trying to figure out, well, we can do 8 stations. We can figure out how, we need to break it up, right? We can't like try to go nonstop without anything. And that's kind of a fun way of like thinking about it, because you need to prepare in a race. You expect that every 5 to 6 miles somebody puts up an aid station for you, and you don't really have to think about it, right? So you adapted on the fly a little bit. You didn't have to mapped out going in saying, okay, every 5 miles I'll take a break.
I did put a course map on my hand. I drew it out, and just so I wouldn't get lost.
That I wouldn't get lost.
Like I would actually worry about you drawing that map on your hand. I feel that if you did it in any sort of pen, you would just start cutting into your skin with that many reps.
180 reps.
It was amazing. Just a joke. I mean, we had to have humor. Like,
I love it.
You're gonna get it tattooed too. You're gonna be like, I remember this course. It was amazing.
Well, that's what I did. I put it on my hand. I'm like, look, I have a tattoo of the course outline.
That's so awesome.
That's hilarious. So let's talk a little bit about expectation and results. So when you set out, I mean, you, Tabatha, you had to adjust on the fly because you expected to run 4 days. When you went out that day, did you have a minimum in mind? Did you try to pre-calculate points? Did you try, okay, I want to run at least a marathon? Like, what was your goal that you set for yourself when you stepped out that morning? Because, right, in real races, when we get at the start line, and we know we don't quit until we hit the finish line, but there is no finish line. So how did you deal with that?
I was kind of hoping to get a 50K because I hadn't done any ultras this year. So I thought, that would be so awesome, because, I mean, I look out my window and I see this hill. So I'm like, that would be so awesome to just think, oh, wow, I did an ultra right there, and have that from my home, just that memory. But I was so like, you use so many different muscles in this activity than in any kind of normal runs. That I was really sore from the day before. So my pace was dramatically slower than it was the day before, because I had put in 12 miles the day before. So once I got going, and I'm like, yeah, if I do a 50K, I'm going to be out here until it's dark. I'm like, I think I'll be happy with the marathon.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
But there were points in there when I'm like, maybe a 20-miler. But then when my friends made it clear that he was staying as long as I was out here, I was like, okay, I can do a marathon then. Nice. I got somebody here with me. So yeah, I mean, if he would have signed up for it, he probably would have placed for sure too. Mm-hmm. But he had more miles because he ran to his house and took, changed clothes and came back.
So that's interesting. So you set out with the possible goal of 50K, then adjusted to a marathon. Doug, how was it for you?
As far as my expectations and everything?
Yeah,
go?
so your pre-expectation is like, as you were preparing into it, and then when you were out there, what kind of adjustments did you do on the fly?
Yeah, so I came in thinking, all right, I'm just going to do 15. Like, what was it? 4 or 5 days earlier, I'd sprained my ankle, and right. I'd been testing it, and I was just like, I don't want to get hurt doing this, so I can't do anything for a month. So let's just listen to your body and see. 15's a fine number. You're not going to be placing anyway, but it's fun to go out and do something. And I'd already done that hill 10 times. When I was doing some hill workouts last year. And so I was like, if I can just add another 5 to that, that's great. And I went out, in the first 5, I just eased into it, just went slow. And then I ran the next 5, and I didn't want to stop, but I made sure I stopped and took a break when I needed to, ran home, got some water, washed my face off, and then did the next 5. And at 15, it was like, well, this isn't enough. And so I did 20, and I was like, well, I'm going to do 25. And I talked myself down from that and just said, 20's fine. Let's do one more in case your mileage is a little off, in case the elevation's off. I want to be over 2,000 feet at least. And I'm glad I did that. Otherwise, I wouldn't have been there. So, yeah, my plan was just to go very slow, take a couple hours and do it. And that was it. Just really listen to my body. And I feel like I did that. I stuck to my plan. I added some, but, it wasn't anything out of the it wasn't an out of the ordinary run distance wise or elevation wise for me. It was just the amount of repeats. So, and I did scale back what I was planning to do. I chose close to home instead of there's a hill just outside of town that I was going to do, have the back of my car as an aid station and just do the 1 mile, 1,100 feet hill as many times as I could. And when I was thinking about my ankle and then figuring out the numbers, I was only going to get in the 60s instead of in the 50s if I went and did the big hill. And I was like, I can come home every time.
Right.
That's a really big hill.
Yeah. It's a great training hill that I am really excited to get back out on when I feel better. But, it's super steep. You can't really run up it, but it has a couple pockets where you can, at least jog a bit and shake your legs out from climbing. But yeah, it's insanely steep. So I wanted to do that, didn't, and doing the one close to home is just so much more fun, right? Because I could go home and I could be like, I want to eat a cookie. I could go grab a cookie and then come out, right? Like there was this silliness to it that continued throughout the day. One of the highlights was near the top of the hill. There was an older couple doing some gardening, and they came out on number 7. And they're like, "Oh, hi!" And I just stopped for a second. I was like, I'm just going to let you know, I'm going to probably be annoying you by how much I'm running by you for the next hour and a half. And they're like, "Oh no, it's not annoying. What are you doing?" I said, "Well, I'm going to run this at least 20 times." And they stopped, and they're like, "Well, how many miles is that?" And I was like, it's going to be 10 or 11. And they're like, well, how much elevation is that? And I was like, it's going to be over 2,000 feet. And they're like, well, do you want us to have water ready for you? And I was like, oh, that's so sweet. That's so thoughtful of you guys. But after every 5, I'm going home. I appreciate it. If I do need something, I'll let you guys know. And they're like, well, do you need us to spray you with the hose every time? Because it was sunny, 75. And I was like, no, I'm fine.
That would have been amazing.
It was really nice that they're just so kind. And every 4 or 5 that I'd go up, they'd stop and ask how I was doing. And be like, well, did you see the deer walk by? Did you see this? And I was like, oh, this is really nice. It was a nice way to get to know somebody in the neighborhood that I hadn't gotten to know before. So
that's cool. Yeah, a sense of community too.
Yeah.
I texted all my neighbors ahead of time. They already kind of think I'm crazy, but yeah. So how did your injury feel? Okay. After.
Yeah, it felt, I sprained it when I was running on a trail and it was pretty unstable, and I just kind of rolled right over it, immediately dropped to the ground. When you hurt yourself and everything goes black in your eyes for half a second, that happened, and I just laid down for a bit, and I was like, well, this isn't good. And so I wrapped it, I took really good care of it, and I realized I went on a test run the next day after that. And I realized it doesn't actually hurt if it's wrapped and I'm running on pavement or pretty durable surface. So the little trail that I went on is very well maintained and groomed. And so there's no real issues of rolling there if I'm paying attention. And so it felt fine. It's still a little sore today, and I'm taking it easy this week, but I wanted to go out and do that. And I found that hill was one that I could manage with the injury, no problem. So I don't feel like I did any extra damage to it, and it's just still healing, which is nice.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah. Because there is that level of responsibility when you are injured of well, I really need to be taking time off. But then it's just, you still want to go out and have fun. And when it's sunny and so nice, I have to do something, right? So, and so that's where I took those 5 first repeats going very slow and just saying if I have to walk this, whatever, I'll get 10 done, I'll walk it and I'll participate and put up a number and it's fine. But then, I did those 5 and I was like, I feel pretty good actually. I feel strong off the ankle when I'm going up and stable going down. So let's see what I can do. So,
Nice.
yeah.
I did
I'm a
clean all the
little.
drains on our road.
Oh,
There's 3 curtain drains that go across the road, to kind of lead the water to the gut, where the side where the trench. So I clean those out. Not on the same repeat, but
So like every repeat a little bit.
yeah, they were pretty full. So.
That's amazing.
I got something accomplished for the day besides running.
yeah.
Fantastic.
So
yeah, go.
Oh, I was going to ask both of you, did you stick to the road? Is there a sidewalk to run in? Was there a trench? And if so, did you avoid driveways? Like, how did you try and limit the instability or weirdness that comes with running on a road?
Well, for me, since it's full on in a neighborhood, I ran on the road and avoided the sidewalk partially because the cars parked on the sidewalk halfway and obstructed it. And so I was like, well, I'm going to be out here for a while. I'm just going to be running on the road. And it's such a neighborhood, quiet road. There were a couple times when a couple cars came down. And the section that was running uphill during those crazy rain turned like into a stream, so I had to like adjust where I run to not get completely soaked. But other than that, I just ran the road, and I sort of ran up on the left side against traffic, and then down on the left side against traffic, which is something you're supposed to do, but that sort of worked for me. And sort of by running sort of on opposite sides of the road, I sort of avoided monotony, if you can really call it avoidance, since it was the same 2 blocks.
Yeah, mine is basically this private drive that comes up to. There's just 4 houses here at the top of the hill, and the funny thing is, my tenant who lives in the apartment on the lowest level of my house is very pregnant, and their church was doing a diaper drive for them. So there were just so many people coming up the hill all day to drop off diapers, and then they didn't really know where the entrance to their apartment was, so they would be just leaving diapers at the top of the hill. So that made it kind of entertaining. That was like a big entertainment factor. But for as far as the body goes, I think more of it was the turnaround, like trying to vary, not just turning like left to right, but trying to go right to left. So because of the ankle situation, putting that strain on your ankles. So I tried to switch that up more than the road itself.
Nice. So what's next? We still have an entire summer ahead of us. Where are we going? What are we doing? What are our plans?
I'm hoping to try another FK. I like the FKTs a lot over here on the peninsula because as a female, most of them have not even been completed by females.
Yeah.
So especially if you're looking at any of the ones, 40 miles and higher in distance. So if you go out with another female or as a mixed gender team, most of the time, all you really have to do is complete it. So I kind of want to do 1 or 2 of those because it's if everything's open, then for me, it's a fun adventure, and I kind of got a little raced out last year. I'd like to do some races, but it's too early to tell, right? I'd like to do a 100-miler. I'm looking at maybe Javelina. 100-miler, something in the fall.
Right.
And then my son just moved down to San Diego, so I don't know how to pronounce it, but there's 100K down there. I think it's Kayameka 100K.
Okay.
It's actually a qualifier for Western states, but I think they're waiving that this year.
Right.
Like we don't have, so it would just be, for fun. But So I'm hoping to. The Mount Baker Ultra was supposed to be Memorial Day weekend.
Right.
And I'm signed up for that. So we'll see if that happens.
Isn't it already postponed?
It's postponed.
Okay, right.
If it's going to happen.
Right, it could happen in the fall.
Yeah.
It could happen in the fall. That's true.
I kind of hope it gets deferred because it was an expensive race and you're paying a lot for, they put ropes and you're climbing Mount Baker. And I think the scenery is not the same in the fall as what you are getting at a May race, as far as like the snow and, snow-capped mountain and everything. So, but we'll see. I'm signed up for Beaverhead too. Beaverhead 55K in July. That they're still hopeful. So.
Oh,
those July races are definitely like it's interesting to watch. I'm signed up for a 50 miler in July, and I'm just like, all right, like they're gonna have to make a decision pretty soon. We're getting to that stage now. I know my town. I just got an alert as we were talking. They have canceled the rodeo parade that happens over the 4th of July weekend, and it's the longest running parade in the state of Montana. And so, it's kind of pointing, all signs are pushing everything further into the summer of being canceled. So, yeah. And so I'm just watching my race.
So you guys going to have another virtual event then?
Yeah. Thank you for segueing again perfectly.
Segway champion. You're the world record Segway over there.
You just have to submit the paperwork. I mean, before we go there, let's talk about the FKTs, because I think that's where I think a huge opportunity lies to be creative too. I think, for you as somebody who can crush 40+ mile distances and being a woman with, not having much competition currently on the official leaderboards, I think there is some awesome things to check off. I also think for the rest of us, there are some what I call only known times, right, where you find completely new routes, weird combinations of multiple peaks or weird routes or so, right, where you can sort of put a rundown that nobody has tracked. And in that sense, it is the fastest because it's the only known time. But I think that there's going to be some really fun things that people are going to come up with that we wouldn't see otherwise, because the summers are usually full. People attempt FKTs every year, but the summers are usually so much filled with races that if things open up, I think we'll be seeing quite a few attempts of some crazy routes, which I'm super excited about.
But if you create it, though, you have to run it twice.
Oh, from an official point of view, it makes perfect sense, right? But I'm also not somebody worried about paperwork, right? For me, it's more about putting the story down, right? To sort of give people something interesting. I'm looking at Doug and I have been talking about the staircase region for years, and the combination of Mount Washington, Mount Eleanor, Mount Rose being so close together, right? And what can be done in combining those with having cars parked strategically as aid station in between. I think there's some fun things that you can do, right?
That one sounds exciting,
right?
Yeah.
I've done 2 years ago. I've parked at Big Creek, and I've ran the road over to Mount Rose, did Mount Rose, ran back, refueled at the car, and then did Eleanor. And that ended up being, 25 miles and 9,000 feet or so of vert. Those two combined.
Oh yeah, that's a good day.
And it was amazing, right? And I think going from Big Creek and going up the trails and then veering off and doing you would start then the other way around, I think, from a safety point of view, and do Mount Washington first, just so you get the climbing out of the way when you're still really fresh, right?
Well, and the mountains that the weather is going to have the bigger impact on too.
Yeah, exactly. That too. So I think that triple.
So Washington, Eleanor, Rose.
Yes,
That
probably.
order.
Yeah, exactly. Because I think you can save yourself some mileage because you can go. I mapped it out once, but you can go up the trail and go over towards Washington from the lower trailhead of Eleanor, right?
Well, even you could park down at the junction below the upper trailhead too.
Yeah.
And do it that way.
Yeah, because you can start either at the campground or there's two other.
Right, exactly. I've mapped it out once, and it seemed like a really cool way because Washington, Eleanor are so close together that you can save yourself some running time. You're not going completely all the way down, right? And so I think that one is something that is ripe for the taking. So
no, that sounds great. That sounds.
I think there's an interesting challenge because I've ran from Big Creek to Rose. You have to figure out what time of day on what day of the week you're hitting it, because that road is so big. There's a wide enough parking strip, like curb, that you can run safely, but there's so many people that scream down that road that it's I mean, if you do it early in the morning it's fine, but you get yelled at and stuff, so you got to be a little bit careful on that stretch, right?
Yeah, you could call it Washoe Row.
Well, there we go.
Row. I like that. Yeah.
Washoe Row. Perfect. So there we go. So we've put it officially out there. So I think we're still several weeks away with snow and stuff like that, but I think that should be a project.
I think more like a couple months away, but that's okay.
Exactly. But I think that should be a project that should be completed by the extended Bremerton Olympia running community sometime this summer.
Yeah,
but it's a celebration.
That's a cool one for sure. I've done I did Wagon Wheel and Rose with Chuck one day. We did a double.
Oof.
But
how did you get between Rose and Staircase? Did you run it?
We drove.
Okay.
We drove.
No, I mean it's really like from running from Big Creek to Rose. There's only like a quarter mile so where you run on the dusty road. But if you run on that dust road and cars drive by, I mean you feel like you're dying. I mean, it's not a good place to be. And so I think that road is something you either want to do early in the morning or so if you spend time on that. I think the other combination that would be a killer would be, and that is something that Doug, that you would like, would be Cup Peak and Mount Gladys.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, I think if you wanted to just burn your quads and see cool shit, that would be what to do. Like, right? Because and that's, I think I teased Chuck about going up to Wagon Wheel that day without just grabbing Cub Peak, because it's only 0.3 of a mile away. Like,
yeah,
but it's another almost 1,000 feet of gain when you.
Oh.
But yeah, it's.
Cup Peak is right above Wagon Wheel, and it's sort of an obscure trail that is not really officially supported by the national park because it goes outside of the national park boundaries, right?
Yeah, exactly. And so there's just a boot path up there, and if you ever want to do, like, that's one of my favorite, just go into the mountains and just go straight up. I mean, I think that's one of the ones that's an underrated gain producer, because it's only, I think, 6.6 miles round trip, and you're getting, I think, 4,000 feet. And that's just a lot. I
did Cup Peak in November. I'll have it on Strava. I'll send you the GPS. What's cool is if you would do the Cup Peak and then go over to Mount Gladys, is that if you're on the saddle of Cup Peak, you see the Sawtooth Ridge, and then
Mount Stone, all that,
exactly right, and then you turn around and you are at Mount Gladys, which is above Gladys Divide, and you would see the Sawtooth Ridge from the other end, from the other side, which would be insane for a day.
That whole area is just breathtaking.
Yeah.
I just love going anywhere in that whole area.
Yeah, the whole Hood Canal side of the Olympic Peninsula, it's one of the few areas that I really miss being out here in Montana, because I'm like, it melts out early because it's not super high up, and it's just so beautiful. And I think like anytime I go back now, I'm going to have to do at least one or two things out there because I just miss it so much. Mm-hmm. But I have an entire 1.2 million acre wilderness that I haven't explored, like 10 miles from my door here. So I need to also, like, when we're talking about plans, I need to remember, like, that's what I need to be focusing on. I need to be grabbing all of these mountain peaks because why not?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So lots of summer project. That's what we're excited about, even if our races are not happening. Let's talk about virtual races. I've been staying up all last night, more or less, trying to come up with a new virtual race idea, and I've got 3.
Nice.
And I think I'm going to do all 3 of them, and I'm going to combine them in a series. So I came up with a point system again, and I think what's going to be is that the points are going to be given just like at the Ski World Cup or so, right? So the first person ends up who finishes on the leaderboard first, gets a certain points based on their standing, and that rolls over to the second and third race. And so you have a whole series of races that you can do. So that's what I'm working on, and they're all going to be focused on vertical gain. So,
oh, cool!
So I'm super excited about rolling that out. So anybody who participated in the last one will get early bird pricing on those. So hopefully by this weekend I'll be able to launch them. So I'm looking forward to that.
Oh, that sounds great. Yeah, now we have access to a little bit more.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
Yeah, so we'll keep our eyes peeled for those, and I'm sure podcast listeners will hear about them a lot in the next few weeks.
Maybe.
Like, it's our vehicle to talk about things we're doing. Before we wrap up, just on a personal note for you, how are you doing with all of this, with all of the COVID-19 pandemic going on? Are you holding up all right? Are you, finding yourself still able to go out, or are you finding that you're hesitant in exploring a little?
It really hasn't affected me too much. I miss my students for sure. Mm-hmm. I tend to just run with kind of a handful of people. We have a local spot, privately owned Yulin tree farm that stayed open. So I was able to still go there and take my dog for weekly runs. Yeah. So, and in the beginning, I wasn't really running too much anyway. So I work at home. Other than teaching, I'm also an eBay power seller. So that's all set up here already at home. I enjoy being home. So it's been okay for me.
Well, that's good. Yeah. We're holding. Matthias and I are both holding up, I think, decently. I think it was fun to kind of watch everybody else transition to the work from home mentality when we've been doing that, and we're just like, hey, yeah, let us know. And it's been nice to see, like, from my side, everybody kind of appreciating their own neighborhoods and taking more walks and getting out and just knowing their local areas a little better. That's been very rewarding to see. So, and that's where I think Matthias's race was a lot of fun, because people got to run the same stretch of road over and over and over again. So
there have been a lot of positive changes, I feel, from what's happened. that I've seen. Like you said, I've seen more people out walking with their families, just more family time in general. People
Yeah.
being creative, having to figure things out in a new way. Some people that never cook at home having to cook at home. Just it's kind of made everybody just adjust and change. And I think a lot of them have been good. So
Yeah.
it'll be interesting to see how we all come out of this and what carries over.
Well, and it seems really cool, like, especially if you have students that are, learning to play the piano during this. Like, that's great. There's so many good things like that. I'm so happy to hear that. I'll be sharing that story a bunch because it's just a good thing to remember that people are expanding their skills right now, and we need to be celebrating that as much as anything else.
Yeah, and then at the end of that talent show, another student said, "Oh, well, I have a piano. I can learn how to play that too." So
that's awesome.
That's another thing. We're all, with all the social media, it's like we see what each other is doing, and we kind of grow and learn from each other as well. So, but
yeah. Well, it's always fun to talk with you. And do you have anything that you want to direct people towards? I know you still have the Breaking the Stigma Facebook page going on, and all
I'm
that.
not super good at keeping up on that.
Oh, it's
over. I'm just not very good keeping up on that. But yeah, the weird thing is I had an appointment with Kitsap Mental Health because that's who I raised the funds for last year. I had an appointment set up with them literally right when this all, like the very first day everything got canceled. And so my appointment got canceled. So I haven't been able to get that to them yet. So people can still donate, but I know it's a pretty hard time to do that. So, but I'm happy. It was, I think, over $6,000. So nice. Eventually I'll get it to them. But yeah.
All right. Anything else? Anybody else has anything else to say? Because otherwise we need to start talking about baking.
I know. I was actually going to bring up. I was going to say, so what foods have you been making? No, I have nothing really to talk about. Which is, I'm writing and I'm trying to heal from injuries. So if anybody needs any like travel tips for future plans here or Olympic, hit me up. Otherwise, stay safe. Wear masks and follow the rules. I think then we can get out of this a little faster.
That's the idea. Tabatha, thank you so much for joining us, for taking the time. It's sunny out, so that's extra hard. Yes, this is it. We're wrapping it up. Another episode of Single Track in the can. See you guys next week, and check Rock Candy Running. Hopefully by this weekend, where I can announce my next virtual challenge for everyone.
Yay!
Yay!
Awesome. Stay safe, everyone.